On this slide, we're going to talk about erection and ejaculation. And this is one of those examples of something you learned about last semester, which is called cooperative innervation. And it involves the autonomic nervous system. So in this case, both the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system are responsible for the sexual response. So one of the easy ways to kind of remember this that they're often taught in medical school is the mnemonic point and shoot. So the point is referring to the parasympathetic nervous system playing a role with erection. And then the shoot would be ejaculation from the sympathetic nervous system. So erection is enlargement and stiffening of the penis, where the blood goes into the corpora cavernosum and it starts to swell. So the arterioles are normally constricted. The sexual excitement causes activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. That's that point part. And there's a local release of nitric oxide. And nitric oxide release causes relaxation of local vascular smooth muscle. So those medications like Cialis and Viagra, all of those are going to increase nitric oxide release into this area. One of the interesting things about the discovery of Viagra is it was actually an accident. What they were doing is they were looking for a medication that would help increase blood to coronary arteries after somebody had a heart attack. But it was kind of an accident. They found that instead of blood going there, blood went to the corpora cavernosum, and there was engorgement of erectile tissue with the blood and enlargement and stiffening of the penis. So when the smooth muscle relaxes, the arterioles dilate. And the corpora spongiosum keeps the urethra open for release of the semen. So for the sympathetic nervous system, the ejaculation is the propulsion of the semen from the male duct system. It actually involves a spinal reflex initiated over sympathetic nerves serving genital organs. So what happens is the ductus deferens, the prostate, and the seminal glands contract and empty their contents into the prostatic urethra. The bladder internal sphincter muscle constricts, and this is very important because it prevents the movement of urine out of the bladder. So semen in the urethra triggers the spinal reflex through somatic neurons. And the ejaculatory event is accompanied by this intense pleasure referred to as climax or orgasm. There's also a release of oxytocin. So they say that oxytocin is also the love hormone. So again, that sympathetic nervous system does what we would expect the sympathetic division to do. It increases the heart rate, increases blood pressure. So this is one reason why they say consult your doctor before sexual activity if you're getting something like Viagra or Cialis. Our next slide is on spermatogenesis, which remember is a type of meiosis. So a type of gametogenesis. So all of them are essentially the same thing. They're just describing specifics. So spermatogenesis is what is going to occur in the seminiferous tubule, begins at puberty around 14 years of age, and adult males produce about 90 million sperm per day. So the seminiferous tubules themselves have thick stratified epithelium surrounding a central fluid lumen containing 4 important types of cells. There are cystenocytes, and these cystenocytes are also called Sertoli cells. The spermatogenic cells are the cells that are surrounded by cystenocytes that give rise to sperm. There are myoid cells, which are actually between seminiferous tubules, but they help to squeeze sperm and testicular fluid through the tubules. And then finally, interstitial endocrine cells, which are also called Leydig cells. They produce androgens and some estrogen, but that estrogen can easily be converted to testosterone through an enzyme called aromatase. But remember that the sperm are going to be haploid, and everything that is kind of on the periphery of this area here, all of these cells are going to be spermatogenic cells. And when they start at the periphery, they are diploid. So they'll go through a mitosis first to produce two daughter cells, which we'll talk about next. Then eventually in the luminal region, there are results of meiosis, which are all going to be haploid. So those are mature sperm. So on our next slide, we're seeing the steps of spermatogenesis. And this is taking a small piece of a part of the seminiferous tubule and looking at it. So in the last slide, it would be almost like we took a piece of pie out of this. So if we cut this tissue right here, this is what we would see in the next slide. So the spermatogonium are going to be out here. These are going to be the mature sperm. So we're going to kind of flip that piece of pie around now so that the top of the piece of the pie where the crust is would be out here, and the tip of the pie would be in here. So first there is mitosis of the spermatogonia, and whenever it ends with gonia, it's going to be a germ cell or a stem cell. So the purpose of this is to maintain the stem cells, and that begins at puberty, spermatogenesis. So it begins with spermatogonia, these stem cells. After puberty, each division produces a daughter A cell and a daughter B cell. The A cell always stays at the basal lamina. It's only the B daughter cell that starts to move towards the primary spermatocyte. And remember, whenever you hear primary, you have to remember it's diploid. Then it goes through meiosis 1. It goes from a spermatocyte to a spermatid. So during meiosis 1, the primary spermatocyte forms two secondary spermatocytes. And remember, secondary means they're always haploid. Meiosis 2 then goes from a secondary spermatocyte to a spermatid. So if we zoom in here a little closer, we can see the cystenocytes, which were the Sertoli cells. One of the most important things they do is they produce this blood testes barrier, which we'll talk about coming up. But at the edge of the crust of the pie would be these stem cells, which are diploid. And we can see them shown over here. The spermatogonium is going to have a daughter A cell and a daughter B cell. Only the B cell enters into meiosis. So the primary spermatocyte becomes a secondary spermatocyte, which, as you can see here, is haploid. So it completes meiosis 1. During meiosis 2, the secondary spermatocytes produce spermatids, which eventually become mature sperm.